Welcome everybody here this evening. We have a great concert in store for you, so sit back and enjoy the next hour or so of our students performing for you. Just a few reminders, our emergency exits. We have 4 exits in the theater, 2 at the back, left and right, and 2 at the front, left and right. So if in the case of emergency, take the nearest exit to get out of the building. Our washroom facilities, for those of you that are not familiar, are at the back, left and right. Male and female washrooms at the back of the theater. As well, like for, I know this is a different one, of course, for Church of Falls for the last number of years, but it seems everybody has a cell phone, so if you could take a moment just to put your cell phone on mute or turn it off or whatever, that would be great so that we don't interfere with the performances here this evening. As you all know, this is the 50th anniversary of a school operating in Church of Falls. The school first opened in September 1967. So throughout the concert tonight, in between the acts, I will be adding in some little tidbits of information on our school's remarkable history. So you need to pay very close attention because, as I tell my wife all the time, there will be a little contest at the end, and we'll see who wins. I'm just joking, of course. So we're going to get started. To open our concert this evening, we will have the grade 3s on the xylophones, and they will be playing our school song. Our school song is an integral part of our history. Not many schools have a school song, so that is something that makes us a bit unique. The song was composed in 1976 by Mr. Bob Reed, our music teacher at the time. Then in 1989, another one of our music teachers, Mr. Mark Bonnell, composed the sheet music to go along with the song. I would now like to call upon grade 3 student Moses Sharan to introduce their song.
We are the grade 3 class and we will be performing a song that you may have heard before. We will be playing our school song on xylophones. We have been working very hard and we hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoy playing it.
Thank you very much, grade threes. That was a great job there on those xylophones. In September 1967, school opened 1 week behind schedule. Classes didn't begin until 9 a.m., but most people were there much earlier. The morning session ended at 12 noon, and classes resumed at 1:30 p.m. Grades 1 and 2 were dismissed at 3:30, grades 3 to 6 at 3:45, and grades 7 and 8 at 4 p.m. I'm lucky to be in grade 7 and 8 that year. On school opening, there were 16 pupils and 4 teachers. The teachers were Mrs. Doyle, Mrs. Lush, Mr. Lush, and our principal, Mr. Wright. Mrs. Lush taught kindergarten, while Mrs. Doyle taught grades 1, 2, and 3. Mr. Lush taught grades 4, 5, and 6. Since there were no grade 8 students at the time, Mr. Wright had only grade 7s to teach. On opening day, there were 2 Dorfords, 1 Tega, 4 Steeles, 2 Jennings, 3 Prices, 2 LaFontaines, 1 Wright, and 1 Strain in attendance. The physical school building at the time consisted of a 6-trailer complex located in the general area of what is today the north end of Gulf Street, right where the Shays and the Cards now live. Next, we will have our elementary choir join us. They will be performing 2 selections, Happy Together and a medley from the movie Sing. The song Happy Together was released in 1967, the same year that our school first opened. This song was the top song on the US Billboard Hot 100 during that year. Happy Together was recorded by the Turtles. The second selection will be 2 pieces from the movie Sing. The elementary choir chose this selection as they thoroughly enjoyed watching and singing along with this movie during French class. Let's welcome the elementary choir to our stage.
So happy together.
Thank you, elementary choir. Great job there on those two songs. Our school enrollment varied greatly in the early years, ranging from a low of 16 in 1967 to a high of 403 in 1973. The permanent school building, which is the one we have today, was constructed as part of the town center complex and ready for occupancy for school opening in September 1970. Overcrowding was a constant problem early on, so a temporary trailer complex was added to the permanent building and extra staff was hired to deal with the extra enrollment. Throughout our history, the school enrollment, like most schools in the province, continued to decline. Our lowest student population reached 123 in 2012, but since that time we have been growing slightly each year. With that decline, of course, came reductions in our teaching staff. One thing worth noting, however, is even with this drop in population, we have been able to maintain great programs in various curricular and non-curricular areas. Besides our music program, which is being showcased here tonight, we have a strong art program, a great core French program. We offer over 30 extracurricular groups and activities for our students. Our junior and senior high students get plenty of choices in their course offerings, and we have a great library that supports the students' learning. We also have a great teaching and support staff who are able to give individual attention to ensuring all of our students are successful. Today, our student population stands at 132. Next, we will have the grade 1s join us on stage. Okay, so as you can see, we have the grade 1s who have joined us on stage. I'm going to ask Megan Cochran from the grade 1 class to come forward, and she's going to introduce their song.
We are the grade 1 class. This year we have been learning and having fun playing the boomerang. The colored tubes that we are holding tonight, we are going to perform a song called Real from the movie Real. We hope you enjoy.
Thank you very much, grade ones, and that was certainly a great job. And that's a lot harder than it looks, believe you me. So they did a fabulous job there with those boom whackers. Before our next group comes up, we relate a little story that a former principal of our school wrote back in 1992. That principal was Cyril Humby. He was the principal from 1973 to 1980. This story is regarding school closure due to weather. In most communities throughout this province, schools may be closed for a variety of reasons. Broken water lines, power outages, heating problems, and inclement weather. From November to March at 7 a.m., students can expect an announcement which might read, "Weather conditions are deteriorating with a predicted snowfall of 10 to 15 centimeters. All schools under the jurisdiction of the blank school board will remain closed for the day." But that is not Churchill Falls. Although there was a reluctance to close school for this reason from the very beginning, it was done on a few occasions up to 1972, on advice from the weather office and management responsible for snow clearing. One such closure occurred in late fall of 1972, when at the onset of a severe storm, it was decided to send students home for the day at the end of the morning session. Parents were contacted to pick up all students since conditions were considered unsafe to permit otherwise. It should be noted the school was suspended for students only and did not include staff. At 1:30 that afternoon, the principal was informed that practically all students were in the town center awaiting admission to the theater, this very theater. The recreation department had decided to do parents a favor and put on a special movie since there was no school. Needless to say, the next day a letter was forwarded to parents from the principal informing them that in future school would not be closed and parents would have to use their discretion whether students would remain at home when weather conditions were extremely unpleasant. End of school closures. I will add that we do have a school closure policy, as all of you are probably aware of, due to bad weather, and even today we don't close school very often. In fact, in recent years, if we have had a closure, it has mainly been because the bus driver has indicated that conditions are too bad to continue to operate the school bus safely, or that Nalcor has shut down its operations. Next up, we will be having the kindergarten class join us on the stage. I asked Finn Fleming to come forward and introduce their son.
We are the kindergarten class, and tonight we will be performing the song "Going on a Picnic" for you. I have gone on a picnic before with the nursery school. They are lots of fun. We have had fun learning this song, and we especially hope you enjoy our blessing.
That was a great job there, kindergartens. In the early days of EGLS, there was a high rate of student turnover, with many students coming after school opened and were leaving before school closed for the year. The school was arranged to meet as many of the needs of such a student body as possible, with the corporation remaining committed to providing whatever was deemed necessary to meet those needs. During the early years, students were very cosmopolitan, coming from 8 Canadian provinces and the Yukon, as well as from the US, England, South Africa, New Zealand, and France. The school curriculum was adjusted to utilize as many of the advantages of having such a diverse group. The early days also saw a francophone population of approximately 20%. These students were instructed in their own language and also provided the opportunity to take instruction in English. By the end of the school year, 1973-74, the number of students requiring instruction in French had declined to the point where this aspect of the curriculum could be discontinued. Today, EGLS is known for its strong core French curriculum, and students have the opportunity, which is not found in many other places in this province, to take core French starting at kindergarten. This means our students get a head start at learning a second language, as most schools don't start core French until grade 4. Next up, as you can all see, we have our grade 2s who have joined us on the stage. I would now like to call upon Jackson Power to come forward and introduce their song.
We are the grade 2 class. This song is called Paris. We are playing the music with blue markers. We have to cooperate because every color is a different note. We had a lot of fun. We hope you enjoy it.
Great job, grade 2s. So those boommakers can't be all that hard. We had 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds playing them, so maybe we'll try to get some of them for the adults down the road. They look a little bit like plumbing pipes. So I see Mr. Paul Murray there in the audience. Maybe he can get some rustle up for everybody. Anyway, that was a great job. Well done. Our school in the early years was comprised solely of a primary elementary school accommodating kindergarten to grade 9. Students in grades 10 and 11 were sent out of Churchill Falls to obtain their high school education, and the company paid their transportation costs to and from their place of schooling. Parents were concerned about sending the students away from the community, so in 1972-73, they began to lobby the company to open a high school. In September 1974, the first high school was opened in Churchill Falls in temporary trailer facilities, and it remained that way for several years until 1978, when the corporation renovated a former construction office for use as a high school. Today, we know that building as the ACB building. This high school initially had grades 8 to 11 and added grade 12s by 1984. One of the biggest issues with a two-building school was that these high school students would have to be transported back and forth to the town center to have gym classes, go swimming, go to the library, or have music classes. The high school remained open until 1996, at which time renovations at the current town center school allowed all grades to come under one roof. There was much anticipation back in 1996 as the high school students would be coming to the same school as the younger students. Parents at the time needed confirmation that the school staff would do their utmost to make sure the younger children were not picked on by the older ones. Having 2 floors and primarily keeping the grade 7 to 12 students separated from the K-6 students was a great idea, and it worked out well. Soon afterwards, things settled down and everyone adjusted to the new school building and the student interactions that still exist today, 22 years later. Up next, we will be having the grade 3s joining us on stage. I now ask Sarah Robson to come forward and introduce their song.
In social studies, we've been learning about Newfoundland and Labrador. During our Newfie celebration, we came across this song and really liked it. We liked dancing and singing to it so much. We asked if we could do it in the spring concert. So here is Newfie's song.
Everybody's doing it.
Great job, grade 3s. The school's administrative structure and governance has certainly evolved over the years. Very early on, there was only a principal, and then as the population grew, a vice principal got added into the mix. Immediately after the first high school got established in 1973, the administrative structure consisted of a principal, vice principal, and a head teacher. The principal was located in the primary elementary school in the town center, while both the vice principal and head teacher were located in the high school. In 1977, the Department of Education did an assessment of the school system and prepared a report which contained several recommendations. One of those recommendations was to establish 2 vice principal positions, one for the high school and one for the primary elementary school. In addition, there would also be a principal position located at the town center school. This arrangement continued until 1996, again when we came together as one school, at which time one of the vice principal positions was eliminated and the current administrative structure of 1 principal and 1 vice principal was established. This has remained that way to this very day. I should note that of all the various principals and vice principals this school has ever had throughout its history, Mrs. Sandra Lane has the distinct honor of being the first female administrator hired at this school. So congratulations to her for that. She's not here tonight, she's in St. John's at a conference. Throughout the years, parent involvement in the governance of the school has also evolved. Ultimately, CFLCO retains direct control and responsibility for the operation of the school. All matters with respect to staffing, school operations, and costs of the school system are borne directly by the corporation. In essence, from the Department of Education's perspective, we are considered a private school because we are run by a corporation. Although we are unique in this regard in that we have to accept all school-aged children living in Churchill Falls into our school. In the license to operate this school, that fact is explicitly stated. In 1980, management considered the possibility of removing itself from direct involvement in the education system in Churchill Falls. Through discussions with educational officials, a plan was formulated to transfer responsibility of EGLS to one of the existing Labrador school boards at the time. There was an immediate and very strong adverse reaction from the parents to not have this happen. They feared that if this happened, our high standard of education would eventually get watered down as funds were allocated to other schools in other communities within the board. Management decided to reassess its position and to give up plans to move the school over to a school board. Instead, there was a group established within the community which would have some responsibility for the school and will have representation from both the community and the corporation, as well as the Department of Education. This group became known as the Churchill Falls School Committee, and it was established in 1982. It operated for approximately 16 years. Eventually, this school committee was replaced by a school council, consisting of parents, teachers, students, and community representatives, along with a school board made up of mainly management personnel within CFLCO, now known as Nalcor Energy. The school council and school board structure of governance still exists today. They meet on a regular basis and make various decisions that impact the operation of EGLS. Next up, we will have the primary choir on the stage to perform 2 selections. Now I'd like to call upon Aaron Parsons, who will come forward to introduce the next number.
The first song which the primary choir will sing is Fella from Fortune. The students sang this traditional folk song for Music Monday this year. Our primary choir, along with 9 other choirs and musical groups across Newfoundland, all recorded this piece and sent them in. The recordings were compiled into one video of all 10 schools across the province singing and playing the piece together. This video can be found on our school website.
Thank you, Aaron. The primary choir, after they perform their first number, will then be joined by our elementary students for their second song, which will be Sing It Together. This was the new bilingual anthem for Music Monday in 2017 and is co-written by award-winning songwriters Mark Jordan and Ian Thomas. Focusing on the power of voices, Sing It Together asks us to sing for joy, for truth, and for freedom. The recording features Inuit throat singing, Métis fiddling, and Indigenous drumming. Our students have been working hard to prepare this song in music, French, and choir practices. Please listen as they share this song in both of our national languages. What a great job from our primary choir, and thank you very much to our elementary students who helped them along with that second number. Next, I'd like to read for you a couple of reflections that a couple of former students wrote regarding their time growing up in the Twin Falls, Church of Falls area and going to EGLS School. The first one is from Maxine McLean Smith. And Maxine is the wife of Terry Smith, who you all will know, of course, the arena is named after. Maxine says, I'll put my glasses on for this one, smaller print. I attended Erie Lambert School in 1967, 1968, and 1969. My family then lived in Twin Falls, 30 miles from Churchill Falls. I finished school in Twin Falls when I completed grade 6. I then had to travel on a minibus to attend school in Churchill Falls for grades 7, 8, and 9. After grade 9, we had to travel away to school, at which time I attended Labrador City Collegiate for grade 10. Erie G. Lammer School was then made up of trailers put together to form classrooms, and a larger room to service physical education. I and about 8 other children from Twin Falls spent every day carrying our lunch and staying at school in Churchill Falls from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. when we returned home. Uncle Stan Bakey was our bus driver for all those years. We traveled on a minibus day in and day out. I don't remember ever missing a day of school because of weather. Uncle Stan was a very prompt person and did not believe in missing school for that reason. I remember leaving home at our usual time of 7:15 one morning. The roads were icy and looked like a sheet of glass. Uncle Stan drove the bus over the road, hitting the snowbanks as he turned corners. We may have been a few minutes late that morning, but we still made it to school. A few times during those years, we got stuck in Churchill Falls due to blizzard conditions. In those circumstances, Twin Falls students were billeted out with the teachers for the night. They were always hospitable. During those years, I was a very shy, withdrawn person. I remember receiving a report card in grade 8, where the biggest complaint from the teacher was that I had not opened my mouth to participate during the whole term. Even though those years held long school days, we never complained about having to travel the road back and forth. We missed out on lots of extracurricular activities, but it didn't seem to matter too much. We had a recreation center in Twin Falls where we had our fair share of sports and other activities. I think those years were the most enjoyable of my school years. I finally graduated from grade 9 in 1969. We held our graduation at McParland House with an exquisite dinner and a movie. There were 2 of us in the graduating class of 1969 from Twin Falls, myself and Yves Fontaine. My second story, and I think the gentleman is actually in the audience because I saw him come in earlier, is from Stan Bakey Jr., Mr. Stan Bakey Jr., and he wrote this back in 1992. The first year that I attended school in Churchill Falls was 1968. That year the school population was steadily growing. I was living in Twin Falls, and the school system in Twin only went up to grade 6, so we were bused from Twin Falls to Churchill Falls. We used to leave home, Twin Falls, at approximately 7:30 every morning and arrive at the school around 8:30. In the 4 years that I made this trip, I think there were only a couple of days that we could not make the trip because of weather. If a storm came up during the day and we could not get back to Twin Falls, we were billeted with teachers for the night. In later years, we would leave early so that we could make it home. In 1968, the school was moved from the trailers to the Green Contractors Building, situated right behind where the present Churchill Falls High School is today. That's the ACB building. This building housed kindergarten to grade 9. In 1969, I'm not quite sure of the time of year, but I think it was around Christmas or a little later, we moved from the Contractors Building to the new school in the town center where it remains today. This was quite a change for people who had never attended a school where swimming and gym were included in the schedule. The school population grew so fast that they had to put a couple of trailers across the ramp for kindergarten and I think grade 1. I attended this school until June 1972, when we graduated from grade 9. Up to that time, there was no high school in Churchill Falls, so students had to complete school elsewhere. However, I got to return in September 1973 to attend the first high school in Churchill Falls. It consisted of trailers and was located right behind where the arena is today. In June 1974, the high school from Churchill Falls finally had its first grade 11 graduation. Next up, we will have our grade 6 class, who will be performing Hanging Tree on their ukuleles. Hanging Tree is a song composed by James Newton Howard and is sung by Jennifer Lawrence in the movie The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1. The grade 6s have been working hard on learning how to play the ukuleles all year. Let's welcome the grade 6s. Thank you, grade 6s. By any measure, Churchill Falls students have always done the school proud, both among themselves and against their peers across the province. With 100% pass rates having become commonplace, scholastic results belie the phenomenal involvement by many in extracurricular activities. During the first 2 years, Eric G. Lambert School presented academic awards to students achieving the highest academic standing in grades 2 to 8. In 1970, the academic award given in the senior grade was named the Eric G. Lambert Scholarship, in memory of Eric Lambert, who was killed in a plane crash in 1969 near Wabash. Once the school was extended to include the high school grades in 1973, the award became known as the C of L Co-President's Scholarship. Initially valued at $500, it was awarded to the student achieving the highest academic standing in grade 11. Over the subsequent years, it moved to eventually being a grade 12 student, once grade 12 came on the scene in 1984. And the value of the scholarship has changed as well, going from $500 to $1,000, and then to $1,000 for each of 3 years, which began in 1986. Winners of this award, and I'll say some of the names, you might recognize some of them, have included Peter Lane, Dennis Betts, David Carew, Carol McLean, Brenda Skinner, Clifford Jacobs, yes, the Clifford Jacobs, Roderick Marshall, Noreen Randall, Rosalind Budgell, Julie Dix, William O'Driscoll, and Jennifer Snow. In 1987, this scholarship was renamed the Jennifer Snow Memorial Scholarship in memory of Jennifer, who died tragically in Quebec City while studying at Laval University. This scholarship continues to be awarded each year since then, and is now valued at $1,000. Our most recent winner of this scholarship was Emma Hussey, who graduated from our school last year. If you have time to come out to our closing assembly in the gym on the Thursday evening, June 28th, this year, you'll see all the other various academic and non-academic awards that we give out, and the list is quite impressive. And Cliff said he would give me money if I mentioned his name, so he's not here, but we'll make sure that everyone tells him that I didn't mention it. Next up on stage, we have our grade 4 class, and they will be performing 2 selections for you. The first selection they will perform is Pink Panther. This piece was composed in 1963 by Henry Mancini and was composed for the classic film Pink Panther. The second selection they will be performing is Can Can from the opera Orfeo. We hope you enjoy both of their selections. Thank you, grade 4s. Great job on those recorders. Our last story for tonight is about our music education program at the EGLS. When our school first started, the curriculum did not include music education. The school always had choirs, both junior and senior, but these were considered part of the extracurricular activities. Teachers were assisted in this activity by interested members of the community. However, a music teacher joined the school staff for the school year 1969-70. From the beginning, there were difficulties with delivering the music program. Teachers worried where the students would get the time to do music, and were also concerned about taking some of their instructional time for music. In addition, the new school did not include facilities for such a program. A classroom was temporarily set up in the club room, located in the town center. This is where our current home economics room is in the school. This proved satisfactory for the school, but the noise interfered with those in the offices underneath. The school administration decided that the noise problem could be overcome if a small number of seats were removed from the front of the movie theater. This will provide space to put the piano and for the students to move about. Such a request was made to CFLCO, but it was never approved. The music program was discontinued in December 1969 when the music teacher left the school staff. Although a music program was recognized as desperately needed, it was recommended that a music teacher not be hired until adequate facilities are provided. However, the concern among parents increased over the lack of such a program in the school's curriculum. And consequently, the music program was re-established for the school year 1972-73, when a music teacher was recruited to join the staff. Space was provided in an adjoining trailer annex. All students up to grade 6 received music instruction. It was optional for students in grades 7 to 9. The school has retained a full-time music position among its staff ever since. Beginning in the school year 1981-82, all students up to grade 9 were involved in music education. In subsequent years, more and more high school courses in music came into our curriculum, where today we offer a music program to all students, grades K to 6, and several high school courses to our students starting at grade 7 and continuing on for some through to grade 12. These courses range from instrumental to choral to music history, appreciation, and theory. In addition, we have become accustomed to a private piano lesson program and a choral lesson program, which is organized and run independently of our school programs. Our current music classroom resides in what was once the bowling alley. Renovations in 1996, when we came together as one school building, enabled us to set that area up as a permanent music room. The room is well stocked with a Yamaha keyboard lab, along with plenty of other instruments and materials. Just last year, our current music teacher, Mr. Ryan, managed to secure a grant from Music Counts to purchase a whole bunch of new instruments. Needless to say, our music education program is alive and well here at Gilderman School. Our last group to the stage tonight is our elementary band. The first selection they will be performing will be the theme from Transformers. Their second selection that they're performing is Smoke on the Water, a song composed in 1972 by the rock band Deep Purple. In 2004, this song was ranked in the top 500 songs of all time by Rolling Stone magazine. Let's welcome our elementary band. Thank you, elementary band. Great job there. So just before we close our concert, just a few thank yous that we'd like to extend out to a number of people this evening. First of all, big thank you to our music teacher, Mr. Ryan, who worked tirelessly putting together tonight's concert. He did a wonderful job. So thank you, Mr. Ryan. There are a number of our other teachers who helped out with that. Our primary elementary French teacher, Miss EGLS, behind stage, helping the stage hands. We have Mrs. Rose and Miss O'Connor, as well as all the teachers with the primary elementary grades who helped out a great deal in getting ready for tonight. So a big thank you to all of them. Also, some of the company workers and their crews who helped with delivering some equipment and helping get these set up. Mr. Scott Cheeseman and his workers, and Mr. Jason Henneberry and his crew. A big thank you to them. We had 3 high school students behind the scenes here tonight as well. Caleb Boyd, Eric Burry, and Joseph Doyle, who were main stage hands and curtain and operating the curtain, and they did a great job. As well, out front, one of our school council members, Susan Chisholm, was collecting money for the Janeways Children's Hospital. So I thank Susan for coming forward, volunteering to collect some money for that. And we will announce a total after next week's concert. So lastly, I'd just like to thank everybody, all of you guys, for coming out, supporting our students for a great night of music. Enjoy the rest of your night.